Story time, part 2. It was raining, so we've adjourned back to the hotel and hopped in the bar. It was a bit cold outside, so we're just going to finish this episode off in the bar. If you're listening on the podcast feed, you really will need the YouTube for the full impression. If you want to enjoy this episode to the fullest of its capacity.
Yeah, I think we should leave some mystery here, just simply so that we are in the bath.
That's all you need to say.
And the rest people can work out for themselves by watching our YouTube channel, subscribing even.
It's a very large bath.
I wouldn't go that far. I talked about the 40 overs I bought on the trot. That pays off in different ways later in life. Like right now when I can't feel my left leg.
That's all right. I can't feel your left leg. Max Gillespie is our next number. It's $3.11. And he gives a clue. He says this. 311 is a cap number. Well, that will make Adam happy because cap number, that's first option.
Yep.
But Max complicates this. He says, I love perfect squares. I'd like to define myself as a perfect square, or numbers that are related to each other through squares. E.g., 525 could be looked at as 5 for 25, which is great because 5 is the square root of 25. This particular number is related to someone that was also apparently fond of perfect squares, and someone who I have not done any research into beyond their figures and cap number.
Yeah, okay, so hi Max. So 311, I think we had a 311 recently. We played the 311 song, I'll Be Here a While, I think from memory, which was big when I was in Buffalo in the same year that we were referring to before, 2001, 2002.
In Buffalo, where they just call wings.
Wings, that's right, Anchor Bar, 1964, represent. Trevor Chappell was test cap 311. I just had a quick look there to begin with, but that's not helped me out. Then I went to big Vernon Philander. He was the 311th bloke to play Test cricket for South Africa, and I kind of went through that and looked at the figures he'd taken, and there was some neat stuff, but there wasn't quite the square necessarily. So he took 224 Test wickets. One more wicket and his average would have been 22.2222 recurring, but didn't take 225. Took 224. And you know, there's
including what 6 for 1 was it in that test in Joburg, that spell that he bowled?
Yeah, at the very end when he finished with 6 for 21. So I mean, he's got I was looking at, has he got a 7 for 49? That would be, square of 7. Well, no, he's got a 5 for 49. He's got a 2 for 16, not a 4 for 16. I thought fifers, what about a 5 for 25? Not quite. 2 famous fifers, 5 for 21 at Hobart and 5 for 30 at Lords in 2012 when they went to the top of the world and beat England in Andrew Strauss's final test match. But then I moved away for a bit, thought, might be one-day caps. Nah, there are no sides with one-day caps beyond 300, and the other nations don't work at all. So I went back to Philander and thought, what about this? I doubt it's going to be spot on, but it's in the same vein as I'm fairly sure Max is. I like round numbers. I like things being perfect. Mm-hmm. I like taking 2 steps to a pavement slab on the street.
Yep.
I don't like touching the line.
Yep. You like your phone battery to be 100%.
Where at all possible. I like things just being so. Blame my mother. Vernon Philander conceded 5,000 runs exactly in Test cricket across 11,391 deliveries. When you consider that sample size, 11,391, to have it land right on 5,000 is quite something. It's even better than Graham Swan finishing on a bowling average of 29.98, I reckon.
29.
Was it 28? 96. Yeah. Still, we make a point of that before, that it's so close to tipping over to 30. We discussed that a little bit ago. But Big Vern, I thought, why don't we look at his last test match and see how that played out? It was against England at the Bull Ring in early 2020, just before the breakout of COVID-19, probably during the COVID-19 era, and we didn't really know about it. Fittingly, he had the tremendously neat and tidy figures of 2 for 50 from 20 in the first innings, which is quite satisfying. But in the second, he only bowled 9 deliveries before breaking down and conceded 1 run.
Oh.
So that was the 1 run that took him from 4,999 to 5,000.
He was not going to leave Test cricket without getting to that 5,000.
And then he was cooked. He retired there and then. So a 9-year Test career from Cape Town in 2011, where of course they bowled out Australia for 47 when he was on Test debut. Mentioned before that he was instrumental to taking South Africa to the top of the world at Lords in 2012. That rampage through New Zealand earlier in 2012, which contributed to him being the second fastest of all time to 50 Test wickets, just 7 matches. That first day at Hobart that I referred to before, 5 for 21 before lunch, when he rolled through Australia the week that Donald Trump was elected, as we were discussing a couple of weeks ago. That final day at Joburg that you touched on, Jeff, when he took 6 for fuck all in 2018, an exclamation mark, if you like, on that. on that pretty awful couple of weeks for Australian cricket, and all by smashing Castle lagers by the dozen, and tweeting after dark like he's Jeff Kennett, and never bowling a ball above 130 kilometres an hour.
That's
Cap
right.
311 for South Africa, Vernon Philander. I don't think we're quite right on the answer, but I love the fact that it is neat, it's tidy, it's 5,000 for Max Gillespie.
It's 5,000, which could be divided in so many ways.
Exactly.
I like it. I think it's divisible, and I always enjoyed that Vernon Philander in the Darren Lehman era of bowl fast or fuck off.
Yep.
You know? I won't say that again, DC. Bowl fast or fuck off. You
can't make your edits. You got cameras on you, Jeff.
I know. We've just got to admit that. But it was like
DC ain't here to save you this
everyone's
week.
got to bowl 145 k's an hour.
Poor old Pete Siddle would have played, 20 more Test matches.
And then Vernon Philander
Maybe
comes
not 20,
along,
but
bowls
yeah.
about 123 and just dismantles Australia repeatedly.
Yeah.
Yep, showed it could be done.
He did, and it was that time that you and I spent a lot of time advocating for Chad Sayers.
Sayers,
We were
Dr.
his
Sayers.
advocate, and we come back to 2018 where he played that one Test match.
Dr. Sayers.
Dr. Sayers.
It took everything in me to not do that, because I did one
On
game
air.
on commentary with
Yeah,
him
yeah.
when I was filling in for you during the World Cup, and sitting next to Chatty, Double D, Chad 2Ds. Not here for 1D Chads, here for 2D Chads with Bharat and Chad, and I didn't. I just managed to not say it. I just want a little bit of recognition for that.
Jeff, while I reconfigure my legs,
Sure.
because it's reached a point where when you can't feel something and it hurts a lot.
Yep.
I'm there. Shane Fagg 223 AUD, got a clue for you. Thought I'd let you have a free swing first off and then go from there. So no clue really. Smash it out of the park. Have fun.
All right, 223. So we've got mid 200s, and we've got a free swing, and the soap holder with the various body scrubs on it and so on is getting in Adam's way. It's
okay.
It's one of the professional
okay.
perils of
Right now it
recording in
is.
the bath.
Yeah.
Now, 223, it's free swing. Play the music, DC.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Now, if you're watching this on video, you won't have heard the music, but that would have been the one and only by Chesney Hawkes.
Can we drop in some imagery of it, maybe
We
on
could.
YouTube?
Maybe, yeah.
Not sure.
Cam could probably do that.
Yeah. Maybe if we played Chesney Hawkes, the one and only, at 1.5 speed, it'll have made the YouTube cut.
It could. All I know is that when it's on the audio version and it's put on YouTube, then YouTube blocks it.
Yeah, no, that much
and
I'm
bans it.
familiar with. Yeah.
So the point is, dusty old bastard. The point is, one and only. Now, this may not be someone who's only played one Test match. They might have played a few. We've loosened the definition over time. But the mid 200s, that is peak dusty old bastard territory. These are the players who played a long time ago who we don't know anything about. Cap 223 for England. There are many reasons why this is someone who we would enjoy, Adam.
Okay.
William Wilfred Whysall. I mean, first up, www.
Yeah.
Dot.
3 W's.
Didn't know what that would come to mean later in
Never
life.
thought of that. The 3 W's.
Three Ws.
www.
Yeah. Dot com.
GarfieldSabers.com.
I'm going to Google that as soon as we finish this show to see what's on there. Number 2, nicknames. People who have good nicknames. This is one of these, when someone's really got a nickname, when like a Cricket Archive or somewhere lists them under the nickname,
Yes.
not under their actual name. Monkey Hornsby, for
Monkey
instance.
Hornsby is the one that jumps out.
Well,
What was
Dodger.
that Geelong player? Scratcher.
Scratcher.
Scratcher Neal. Played in the 70s.
Whiskers
for Geelong.
Hocking.
Whiskers Hocking.
Dodger is the nickname that we get for William Whysall. So Dodger Whysall is how he comes up on scorecards as well and in the archives, which is interesting. So Dodger, he will be in our report. Another reason to love Dodger, shithouse until quite late in his career. Like, probably doesn't care, probably doesn't try too hard, fucks around for a bit, on the second 11, on the ground stuff, not doing much. Then World War I happens. So by the time he comes back from World War I and actually starts doing anything, he's 33 years old before he has his first 1,000-run season. And that's how you tended to mark a good player in those days, because they played a lot of games. But if you could make 1,000 runs in the season, you're going okay. So he's 33. He's basically shit out until he's 30, 31. He starts getting okay. And then 32, 33, he starts going okay. Years of age, not the year that it is on the calendar. But from there, starts opening the batting with George Gunn, I think, for... who was he even playing for? He was playing for Notts. And they had 40 century stands between them. And for each of the next 10 English seasons, he makes at least 1,000 runs. In half of those seasons, he makes over 2,000 runs. So suddenly, he's going absolutely great guns. And he gets a look at Test cricket in 1924-5. gets sent off to Australia with the Gilligan's lot, off to Gilligan's Island.
On SS Minnow.
Yeah.
Off to Gilligan's Island. I wonder when people use that term so routinely about the minnows, whether they even know the origin of that term. I mean, I really shouldn't. You know, Gilligan's Island stopped being filmed in what,
It's
1969
just a small fish,
or
isn't
something.
it? A minnow.
I think it was to do with the SS Minnow, which was the small ship.
Right.
I think that's when it's used in a pop culture reference. I'm fairly sure that's where it comes back to. Anyway.
All right. Well, look, he's out there in 24-25. He's the reserve keeper. He's mostly in slips in county cricket, but they have him as the reserve wicket keeper. He does get called upon though as a proper bat, not as the wicket keeper. And these are timeless Test matches. England get thumped in the series. They go down 4-1. Every match is a belting, including the one that they win, except for one in Adelaide, which we've spoken about before. This is the margin of 11 runs, and this is when Jack Ryder goes to town, makes 201 not out in the first innings, 88 in the second innings, one of the highest aggregate performances for a long time. That was. And Dodger does his job. So they flip the batting around in the first innings. They don't quite reverse the order, but they chop things around. And so he opens the batting with Maurice Tate, the fast bowler, when he's supposed to come in down the order.
Was he pinch hitting, I wonder?
Well, I think I should have probably looked into why they decided to reverse the card. But Gilligan decided to reverse the card. Something to do with conditions. Maybe they were coming in late in the day.
Yep.
That's the sort of thing that someone researching a history podcast might have looked up. I didn't because I was looking up other things. Doesn't make any runs when he's opening the batting there, but he does make runs in the fourth innings. He makes 75. They get set 375 to win. He top scores in that innings with 75, gets them to 254, and from there they get closer and closer and closer and eventually fall short by that famous margin of 11 runs. And then he goes one better in the next test. He makes 76 in Melbourne when England win by an innings. Now the series is already gone at this point, but he's made a contribution at this stage with 2 decent half centuries back to back. Plays in the final test of the series and then doesn't get another gig until 1930 when they bring him in for one test match when Bradman makes the double hundred at the Oval. Australia clinch the Ashes.
Yes.
He plays in the 5th test of that series, doesn't make any runs. He's 42 years old at that point. And that's it. That's it for Dodger. But that is pretty much it for Dodger in life as well as in cricket, because a couple of months after this, he's out late, he's busting some moves, he has a slip and falls on a dance floor. He's cutting the rug. I don't know if he's Charlestoning at that point in time. Don't know if there's some sort of...
He's doing the Melbourne Shuffle, I believe.
The Melbourne Shuffle. He's got his fatties on.
I was doing the Melbourne Shuffle on Saturday night at Dylan Wedge's wedding.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't even drinking.
No.
Had a voice to preserve for the next day.
Yeah, you had no voice pretty much the next day. Yeah, I don't know if Dodger was wearing candy bracelets. I don't know if he was, if you had reflective high vis on at the time. I don't know if he was Steve O'Keefing it with a glow stick in each hand. But I know that he's cutting the rug.
And Trance were playing at the time.
Yeah. He has a fall and he busts his elbow and then he gets septicemia from the wound. He gets a blood infection, has a transfusion, doesn't work. A couple of weeks later, he's dead. He dies of septicemia.
Died from the dance floor.
And so that is the final
Met
reason.
her on the dance floor.
Yeah, to love the man that they called Dodger. He took it easy until late in life, played it late, did his part, died on a dance floor. Dodger Whysall. What a life. What a way to go.
Someone should write a book about his life. Maybe
Probably
you're the
have.
man for that. They probably have. Righto. Okay, we know about the Dodge. 2-2-3 for England.
That's 2-2-3, Shane Fagg. That's for you.
Brilliant. I feel fulfilled.
Thank you.
We haven't had a dusty old bastard from you for a while, so you made it count. In hindsight, I probably could have gone down that route for my next number too, which is my last number of the day. 282, AUD, Sam Brown. Good firm name. Set your watch to that. Sam Brown sent you.
Sam Brown school days.
Sam Brown sent you. Sent me.
Yeah.
Here's what I had a little flick around with. I just stuck with the score for this one. Kept it simple. Kept it old school. 282. It's been made 7 times in first class cricket, but never in a test match, surprisingly.
Yep.
It's one of those numbers that most numbers around there have been made.
Also, quite a few not very good players have made it. I remember having a look at this as well, and yeah, there are some, I don't know, players you wouldn't say had great first-class credentials who've made 282.
Well, let's go through it. So there's some interesting players for some interesting reasons. So Ben Duckett, pouring a pint over his head. In early 2016, which is just after you and I have seen him play against Australia in late 15, makes that score early in the season in the April, I think. And it's not long before he makes that transfer to Notts, where he's done splendidly the last couple of years. He's back in the England white ball setup. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays Test cricket sooner rather than later again.
Got to go to India.
He could well go to India. He could well play in India. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a chance in, maybe like in the New Zealand series. They play down there for a couple of Test matches after they're finished in Pakistan. Sonny Gavaskar made it for Bombay. He was probably stat padding at the time, I'd imagine, at some point or another. Lendl Simmons. This is kind of a bit of a what could have been sad story one, I reckon. Playing for West Indies A against the touring English in 2009. He couldn't have been that old in 2009. Lendl Simmons, like he might have been 20 or something like that. Made 282 against a pretty strong England attack. It's a reminder that his career, whilst fulfilling, was a World Cup champion. There was probably a strand of that career that wasn't fulfilled because he never really gave himself the chance to be a prolific red ball player because he specialised so early. And
everybody knows Lendl Simmons is a champion.
Everybody knows Lendl Simmons is a champion.
He tore up India in that semi-final of the
T20
World Cup in 2016.
He did, absolutely.
After one of Kohli's best innings, the 89 not out, and then Simmons comes out and just
82, I think Simmons made in that.
Sounds about
he
right.
made 282 some years earlier than that against a red ball. Mossadegh, my boy, my favourite Bangladeshi, Mossadegh Hussain, made 282 back in 2014.
The year 214.
Yes, in the year 214. 2014.
Paul
15.
is writing his letter to the Corinthians. The Corinthians are like, this fucking guy will not stop writing.
He can bat, Mossadegh Hussain, they said. He made that for a Burrisall division against the Chittagong division.
Oh, yeah.
Andy Sandham, another final word fave. He made it for Surrey 2 years before his Jamaican triple, his 325. He made 282 in 1928 in a county game.
Before he'd learned to go on with it.
And then the one I'm going to focus on, Herbie Collins.
The love bug.
Herbie Collins, a man we've spoken about only really in relation to being a man who made a century on Test debut. We spoke about him at length. I think in our live show it came up for some reason in Adelaide last year. It's certainly been part of our discussions. But we've never really...
sounds like a 20s jazz musician.
Sure.
Me, Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen. Make him welcome, Herbie Collins. Wah, 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 wah. Kind of vibe.
Yeah. No, I hear. I'm with you.
He was the band leader when Dodger Whysall took a dive.
Yeah.
Herbie Collins was up there with the big band playing some fast saxophone music. That's what brought him down.
Yeah, he's playing with Guru Josh these days in heaven. So his 282
David Guetta
was in 1912-13 for New South Wales against Tasmania in just 290 minutes, if you don't mind, umpire. It's true to say that this was when everyone was doing it, right? You go to Hobart, you break a record. You go to Hobart, you break a record. Well, he did. He did break a record. His highest score to that point was 82, so he beat it by exactly 200, much as it was with Lendl Simmons. We referred to 82 a moment ago. He's only 24 though, and it's seemingly all ahead of him. But it's 1912, isn't it? So we know what comes next. World War One. He's in the military. He enlists
and the best.
Yes,
World War One.
Yes, the one that the greatest season that was, the podcast I've made. Well, the Great War. You could
looking forward to the World War One edition.
The greatest war that was, in terms of casualty per capita, probably is. Not sure if that's true. Wasn't World War II more deadly?
Yes,
per capita, and we just think of World War One in those.
Well,
terms?
maybe there were fewer people around before World War One. Bigger population by the time you hit World War II.
Yeah,
I don't know where you are with percentages.
Either way,
world population's expanded.
It did. Probably not by that much though, because so many people got killed in World War One. Yeah. Anyway,
true.
Morbid shit from us on the final word today. So he played in the military 11s. He was sort of an Australian cricketer. AIF, he represented that. That touring side through the war, which I find it in hindsight kind of remarkable. They played so much fucking cricket, but of course it wasn't first class or anything like that. They were all sort of exhibition games, keeping the spirits high, rallying the troops literally. Through that stretch of time. He was known as a very effective cricketer, Herbie Collins, but not pretty. Then after the war, belatedly, that Test debut finally comes when he's 32 years of age in 1920 against England. And as we've discussed before, at the Sydney Cricket Ground, he makes 104 in the second dig to become the 5th Australian man to reach a ton at the first time of asking. Strictly speaking, the second time of asking, he made 70 in the first innings. Pretty fucking good debut though, right? 70 and 104, making the most of it at 32, having missed arguably the best years of his career, went abroad in the war. Went on to play 19 Test matches over the next 6 years. He was captain 11 times, so 11 of his 19 Test matches he was in charge, including in South Africa in 1921 when Warwick Armstrong was crook. They called in Herbie Collins to lead the side. He had a great tour of England in 1921 as well. But his career ended in 1926, also in England, when they lost the final test, which you and I have discussed before. The first 4 tests were draws, 3-day affairs. This was the last Ashes series where they played, by default, Test cricket over 3 days, which is quite weird because in Australia it was timeless cricket.
Yep.
In England it was 3-day cricket.
Yep.
By the time Bradman rocks up in 1930, I think there's a combination of 4-day and 5-day matches.
Yeah.
Well, to break the deadlock...
Which is funny when you talk about cricket now and you're like, oh, how will these players transition from a red ball to a pink ball or whatever?
Exactly.
Imagine if you went from playing timeless tests in one country to 3 days in the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, there's 4 ball overs here. It'll be 5 ball overs next year, but 8 ball overs in that country.
Yeah, you've got it. So in the case of Herbie in 26, that final test, his captain, a lot on the line, they make it a timeless test in order to get a result. And as you'd remember, a bloke who hadn't played for 5 years, one Wilfred Rhodes, comes into the England side and bowls them to victory as I don't know, what is he then? He must be 40... If in 1926, he must be 48. So he's brought back from the, international wilderness, dragged down from Yorkshire to the
Old Spinners Club,
the
Old Spinners Home.
And the left arm great does the business. But there was a bit of a postscript. Now, Herbie Collins' nickname, he was a betting enthusiast in the war years. Oh, I'm not saying a sports betting enthusiast, he just really loved betting. So much so that his nickname was Horseshoe, because he was seen as having good luck when betting on the nags.
Or was it that he gambled on that game where you throw horseshoes at a stick?
It might have been that as well. That's probably more likely.
Yeah, coins, that kind of deal.
I just kind of put 2 and 2 together because later in life he becomes a bookie. Spoiler. But you're probably right. It is more likely to do with what they did on the boats. Anyway, and there was suggestions after that loss that he did something dodgy that week at the Oval. But I had a look at it. He made 61 in the first dig. I mean, I guess it's probably guilt by association, given that by that stage of his life he was working as a bookmaker. He went on to be quite prolific in that industry. So he left with a bit of a cloud over his head about what played out at the Oval that week. But England won comfortably. So I'm not quite understanding where this all comes from. But it's in his obituary and it's on...
Get bowled out by a 100-year-old, then maybe it should be asked.
Well, a man who continued playing Test cricket for a few years yet. Anyway... 4 tons in 19 Test, averaged 45, nearly 10,000 first-class runs, 32 first-class hundreds despite losing 5 years with the war. And after playing, was a bookie all the way through until he passed away at age 71 in 1959. But his highest score before all of that came in 1912, and it was 2-8-2 for Sam Brown.
Played a hell of a jazz clarinet too. Herbie Collins. Knew where the high
Maybe with
notes
Sam
were.
Brown.
Yeah.
They could have been a duo, like Hale and Pace.
Well, like Sam Cooke, did a lot of kind of soul singing, that sort of thing. Different era, but could have crossed over. Maybe like an old band leader, Herbie Collins, could have been playing with a young Sam Cooke. I've never really got in. The Sam Cooke song where he's like, "Don't know much about history."
Yep.
I'm like, after a while, it's just a list of things you don't know much about, and I'm like, this guy's pretty fucking boring. Like, you don't know a lot about anything. Know much about geology. I'm like, well, that's fairly specific. Don't know much about science books, but I do know that I love you. And I'm like, if that's all you got to offer is like, I'm not interested in any of the subjects, any humanities, any of the broad field of human knowledge and endeavor. I'm not interested in any of that. I just want to sit around and look at you. I'd be a bit creeped out by that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you know what? Go and get interested in some stuff and then come back to me.
It doesn't matter how good looking you are. If you're boring, at some point, the magic, I mean, kind of like we're talking about, keeping the magic in this episode for those who aren't tuned in. Same here. There needs to be something there. There needs to be an inherent curiosity. Yeah. And Sam Cooke maybe didn't have it. It could have been for poetic license as well.
I think he was just pitching things the wrong way. That's all. Maybe he was more interested. He wasn't selling it to me. That's all I'm going to say. Sam Cooke, if you were trying that on me, that wasn't going to get me where you wanted me. Wasn't going to get me in the bath with you. Right, one more number. Ciaran O'Kane.
Yes.
It's in euros. It's €11.78.
So $11.78 from Ciaran O'Kane. Don't think you'll need much of a clue, or that I'll be the only one pledging this around about now.
Right, now this is a re-up pledge, so if you're not clear on how things work, if you're a first-time pledger, you generally get up on the show within about 3 months. If you edit the pledge, then it takes longer. It tends to be, closer to, 9 months or 10 or whatever it is. Well, this one's going all the way back to the very end of December last year, which means it was after the Boxing Day test, which means I was thinking, as Adam's legs fall off.
Fuck. It's just reached that point where it's a bit too hard.
Okay.
Zip on through, Jeff.
All right.
Zip on through.
1178, around last year, I'm thinking that's got to be Scott Boland related, surely. Surely it's got to be something to do with the ridiculous economy at which he took wickets. But the thing is that Scott Boland's career average has never even got as high as 1178. That would be way too high. He's never cracked double figures.
Like Father Marriott.
Yeah. He's
our original DOB.
He's 7.85 runs per wicket after his first test match. He goes to 8.64 after his second and 9.55 after his third. He does reach 11 wickets. Remember, the number is 1178.
Okay.
After his first 3 innings. But this pledge comes in before that third innings, which is in the Sydney test. So it can't be that. So what happens in Boxing Day? 1 for 48 in the first innings, 6 for 7 in the second innings. There is a point in the second innings at which he has 5 for 53 in his career, which is an average of 10.6. That's not quite 11.78. So I'm not there with that. Looked at strike rates. Career strike rate for Scott Boland, 1 every 14 balls in that first match, I think it was, and then slightly higher after that. So there's nothing there. I looked at, there was an India-South Africa test being played around the same time. Nothing evident in that scorecard. 1, 1, 7, 8. 1, 7 and 8 are 3 of the 5 digits in the match analyses that Scott Boland had. 1 for 48 and 6 for 7. So I've got 3 of the 5 numbers, but that doesn't work. I thought, what if it's the gap, 1,178 days between when he'd last played for Australia, because he'd had a one-day and T20 career years before for Australia. October 2016, when he had played his last ODI.
That was in Sri Lanka.
That means it was 1,901 days before he got to his test debut. So not 1178, 1901. And I was really unhappy with myself at this point. I'm like, how am I not getting this? I know exactly the time period. I know where it has to be. What is it? And I was thinking, what else is there? I thought, what if it's what England's batters averaged in that test match? Because they were awful. Close. They averaged 12.65 per player across the 20 wickets that fell in that test, not 1178. Not going so well. And then this is the thing where I realised what I was supposed to be looking for. Joe Root does okay in that match. He makes 50 and he makes 28. But he doesn't make the huge scores that he had been making previously in the year. Remember, he was trying to break the record, or probably we were barracking for him to break the record, that Mohammad Yusuf had set of 1,788 runs in a year, and Joe Root didn't quite get there. He ended up on 1,708. So he ended up 80 short, and that was the end of his big year. And I thought, hang on, it's the end of his big year. 1178 is the gap from Joe Root to Rory Burns as England's next highest run scorer in that year, who made 500 and whatever it was. And 1178 was the famous number of the incredible gulf between Joseph Edward, is it the middle name? J-E?
I can't remember.
Giuseppe Rute in Italian. And the next best for England that year, 1178. And that is indeed a number that people would have been thinking about around about December 28, 29, 30 of 2021.
Good one. Yes, Giuseppe Roots, Rory Story, Allegory, Montessori, Burns. Here are some words that rhyme with Corey. Now, I've had that number written in my brief for however many test matches I've covered with England this year. I had that stat there, which I probably read it out a few times, the gap between Root and Burns, but it didn't twig when I looked at this earlier today. So very good from you. And that will obviously be it, won't it?
Good from Ciaran as well.
Yeah, good from Ciaran.
Good number. Enjoyed that.
In a way, I'm still
in the Euros.
Yeah, I'm still quite perplexed how Root didn't get there, because remember he rocked up in Australia with not huge amounts to do in relative terms, and then he started at Brisbane with an 80 odd, then went to Adelaide and got an 80 odd, then in Melbourne. I suppose it's because Sydney and you know what it was.
Adelaide didn't make many.
You know what it was. It was they made 80 odd in the first dig with Milan.
Brisbane.
It was and Brisbane too.
Dark.
Both Brisbane and he made an 80 in Brisbane, 80 in Adelaide, and a 50 in Melbourne, and it falls away.
Yeah,
but the point is,
duck in the first innings at Brisbane. He's not using all of his opportunities.
No, absolutely. I'm just making the point that on reflection, the reason why it was because the Ashes schedule had an extra test match in January. Ordinarily, it would be mapping it out, saying, well, he'd only need to do halfway well in Australia without considering, oh, hang on a minute,
He's got 3 tests
that
instead of 4.
last test, which left him short of
Also,
1788.
He probably needed to make 100 in Australia, which he is apparently not able to do.
Yeah, well, I really, truly hope that he goes around. He will go around for another cycle, of course he will, and that he can...
I don't know why. It's a bloody miserable trip. Like, none of them are having fun when they come to Australia for an Ashes trip.
I had fun this time. Might unlock something. Having played well in the T20 World Cup. Not that many of them play Test cricket, but a few of the core team do. Sort of your Mark Wood, Ben Stokes types. Anyway, you know what? That's story time 113 done. We are about to get out of the bath.
Yep.
We're about to go to the pub.
Yep.
I don't think that's really a work thing, is it?
No.
We're just going to do that.
We're going to enjoy an evening in on the southwestern Victorian coast, because that is what we're down here to do. If you want to play the game, it's very easy. You go to patreon.com/thefinalword. That's where you find us. You put in your nerd pledge. It helps us keep making the show. You get to be part of the fun. Everyone's a winner, baby. That's no lie. It never fails to satisfy.
bit.ly/tabs sign up if you want to jump on that mailing list. We'd love you to do that. As we say, there's no sort of financial commitment at this point. We just want you to kind of get a feel for what they're doing. Great work for all sorts of members of the community, especially in the UK. Great members of the cricketing community. And visit victoria.com, visit melbourne.com. This is the gateway, Melbourne is the gateway to Victoria, to where we've been touring about, both during the opening stages of the T20 World Cup and this week en route to Adelaide, and it's been a delight being able to do that with them. Visit Victoria. So consider what's it?
Come on down.
Make your
Plan your
Melbourne moment now. Why not?
And the last plug is that we've got a live show on Wednesday, November 23rd with Chris Rogers in Melbourne. So if you are visiting Melbourne, come along to that. Look on our website or whatever. Look in the show notes. There'll be a link. You'll figure it out. Come along and see the final word live. Why not?
This has been Storytime 113. Thanks for listening. We'll do it again pretty soon.
Yeah, and thanks to Cam Fink for putting this beautiful scene on camera for everybody to enjoy for the rest of our lives.
Have a nice weekend. Oh, fuck.